A surprise omission at SEC football media days, a sleeper freshman wide receiver, and Olivia Dunne returning to the LSU gymnastics team. We got a ton to do. It's Locked on LSU. Let's get it.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Glad to have you aboard with us here. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts, and of course, on YouTube. So please subscribe, smash that like button on YouTube, buckle up, because we got 25 minutes or so here to talk all things LSU. Olivia Dunne returning to the LSU gymnastics team, why that is significant for not only the gymnastics team, LSU at large, and why Olivia Dunne made this decision. I'm going to get to that. A sleeper wide receiver in this LSU group, a name that, quite honestly, I hadn't thought much of. We're going to get to him here in just a smidge. But I want to start with the big news of the day in the conference, which is that SEC Football Media Days, which starts on Monday. We're less than a week away. The attendees have now been announced. I want to be very candid with you. I'm taking a little bit of a risk here talking about this on the show today because, very honestly, I don't know if you care. I have gone to SEC Football Media Days every year since 2012. So for more than a dozen years, I've been making the trek to Hoover, to Atlanta, last year to Nashville, now to Dallas. And I think, just very candidly, the media thinks a certain way about SEC Football Media Days because we're the ones there immersed in it and trying to extract the most value. But the reason we are there is to bring content to you. And if you're not getting the value out of us being there, then there's no point in having the event. But I quite honestly just don't know if this is a topic that we, the media, talk a lot about and the fans don't really care, or something that fans actually care about. So the attendees were announced. So again, candidly, I hope I make sense here, and I hope this is something that you do care about. The attendees were announced. And I have long contended, and if you're not familiar, for SEC Media Days, it's a 4-day event. Every coach brings 3 players. And over the course of 4 days, we'll now have 16 coaches and 48 student athletes that'll participate over those 4 days. And a lot of times you hear coaches say they use media days as a reward for some players. And so it's an opportunity for guys to put on a nice suit, fly on a PJ, touchdown in a big city, and go do the media tour. Get to maybe grow their social media following a bit, get to go through the media car wash, and then go have a really nice meal before they fly back home. And my point has always been that's not the point of the event. The point of the event is you ask the media from all over the league and, quite honestly, the country, to come descend upon this one place to help tell the stories, the interesting stories of the league. And in order to do that, you have to have the most interesting players. So I have long said that I don't think schools should be able to choose their attendees. I think the league and the media should choose who attends. And I think it should be a mandate that every team bring its quarterback. And if you don't have a decided starting quarterback, then the most veteran player attends. Because quite honestly, that's just who people want to hear from. And so let me start with the good. I'll start by telling you the 3 players that LSU is bringing. And there is a surprise. The 3 players that LSU is bringing is Garrett Nussmeier, which that's a huge win. Nuss is going to be one of the most interesting stories in the Southeastern Conference this year, if not all of college football, because he's such an outlier. It is so rare now that student athletes stay 4 years, especially quarterbacks, stay 4 years in one place and wait their term. Well, Garrett Nussmeier has done that. He's also the son of a coach. He's very polished. He was exceptional in the bowl game and in spring, and I think Garrett Nussmeier will acquit himself very well. Harold Perkins is going, and that's a no-brainer. He's on everybody's preseason All-America team, and he's a projected first-round draft pick, and he's a guy that is interesting that people want to hear about. He's making the switch to off-ball linebacker, again, what he did last year. And so these conversations about Perkins, I think, are very pertinent and very obvious, and it's great that he's going. The one that's a surprise is Mason Taylor. And it's not to say that Mason Taylor isn't an interesting character. He is. I mean, he's played since his freshman year. He had the 2-point conversion catch against Alabama. His dad's an NFL Hall of Famer. There's a lot of reasons why Mason Taylor is interesting. But he's not as interesting as Will Campbell. Will Campbell is a 3-year starter at left tackle. He is on everybody's mock draft as a top 10 pick, projected to be the first overall offensive lineman selected, everybody's first team All-American. Will Campbell should be going, quite honestly. I'm not going to get all up in arms about that, but I do believe Will Campbell should be going. But by and large, the fact that LSU is bringing Garrett Nussmeier and Harold Perkins, I think checks a few huge boxes. Before I go any further, I forgot to do this, so let me do this quickly. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. So download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So no real issue with who LSU is bringing other than I think Will Campbell should be going. I want to be clear. That's not a knock. Please don't misunderstand me. That is not a knock on Mason Taylor. It's more of I just think Will Campbell is the better player and the more deserving player of going and the more interesting player to tell stories. But I want to go back to the point about you, the fan. The whole point of this event isn't to reward veteran players or anything like that. It's to tell stories, to provide engaging content for you, for the fan. And when schools elect not to bring their most interesting players, it's a grind. I'll tell you, there have been years at SEC Media Days, and generally it's when the league lacks star power at quarterback that it's a little bit of a struggle and a grind. To be quite honest, I mean, I could rattle off some names. I mean, if you're an LSU fan, chances are you don't know the name De'Eric Jackson. Well, he's a senior linebacker from Kentucky, and he's going to be going to SEC Football Media Days. And sometimes those guys end up being the best and the great storytellers, and you talk about them forever and ever and ever. And maybe he might be that. I'm not trying to pick on him. But let me run through. So here's the great thing about this year's lineup. 11 of the 16 teams are bringing their quarterbacks. Alphabetically, Alabama's bringing Jalen Milroe. Auburn is bringing Peyton Thorne. Graham Mertz of Florida will attend. Carson Beck, projected number 1 overall pick in next year's draft. We mentioned Garrett Nussmeier. Ole Miss is taking Jackson Dart. Blake Shapen from Mississippi State is coming. That's a case in point. Blake Shapen was at Baylor last year. Of course, Mississippi State brought Will Rogers to SEC Media Days last year. Well, he's now the quarterback at Washington. So Mississippi State and new coach Jeff Lebby, they bring in Blake Shapen from Baylor. Guy has not taken a snap as the Mississippi State quarterback, but he is interesting. He's the guy you want to hear from at Mississippi State. So hat tip to the Bulldogs and Jeff Lebby for bringing Blake Shapen. Missouri's bringing Brady Cook. Oklahoma's bringing Jackson Arnold. Again, Oklahoma effectively ran Dylan Gabriel out of town to be able to play 5-star Jackson Arnold. And he started the bowl game, threw 3 picks in the bowl game, but he's going to get his first crack at it this year. They're bringing him to Media Days. Texas is bringing Quinn Ewers. I'll tell you, though, for me, it's unconscionable that Tennessee is not bringing Nico Iamaleava. That's a former highly rated prospect that everybody knew his name in the recruiting trail. Obviously, you're replacing Joe Milton. Nico's the big prospect, NIL storylines around him. It's his turn now. And the fact that you're not bringing Nico is criminal. Why is Tennessee bothering to show up if you're not bringing the guy everybody wants to talk to? And I'll say the same for Texas A&M. Texas A&M is not bringing Connor Wegman, which I can't understand why. He was your starter a year ago. He was injured, sat the rest of the year due to injury. He's back. He's got Heisman odds. He's a projected first-round draft pick in the way too early mock drafts. The fact that Tennessee isn't bringing Nico and A&M isn't bringing Connor Wegman, it defies the purpose of the event. I can't think of a single player on either of those rosters I would more rather talk to or hear from than those two guys. So, again, I just don't know if you care. And so I told you I was taking a risk starting with this. But, next week we're going to spend 4 days in Dallas. And they are long days and long hours and conducting like literally dozens, if not hundreds of interviews over the course of those days to try to bring you all the best content possible to set the stage for the SEC football season. But, my hope is sincerely that some of the guys we're not expecting become showstoppers. I mean, I'll tell you, last year, the best The best interview I did was with Dallas Turner from Alabama. And he became a villain at LSU because of the cheap shot he took on Jaden Daniels. I mean, I can go through the years and remember Jarvis Jones, a linebacker from Georgia, who was a fantastic All-American player, one of the best interviews I did there. Darius Geis from LSU was awesome at SEC Media Days. There's always those guys that stand out. And JT Daniels, the 1 year he spent at Georgia, was when he transferred in from USC, was at SEC Football Media Days and was awesome. So, I hope that for a lot of those guys, but we have the list of attendees, and LSU will go first on Monday, as that started when Ed Orgeron became the coach and has continued here with Brian Kelly. LSU leading off SEC Football Media Days after Greg Sankey opens up the venue. So on Monday, you'll have all the recap and reaction from Brian Kelly and LSU there at SEC Football Media Days. Okay. I'd love your reaction, so drop them in the comments there on YouTube or on podcast, or hit me up on Twitter at Matt Moscone. I'd love to know your feedback on that. But we do have some actual other stuff I want to delve into, including a potential sleeper wide receiver. Is there a guy on this LSU team we're not talking about that we should be? I want to get to that as we continue here on Locked on LSU, your team every day. We're brought to you by GameTime. Man, I'm pretty fired up. The MLB All-Star Game is coming up. Home Run Derby Monday. All-Star Game on Tuesday in Arlington, while we're going to be in Dallas at SEC Football Media Day. So I may actually pop onto that GameTime app and see if I can go score some tickets for the Derby on Monday or for the All-Star Game on Tuesday. Remember, the closer you get to first pitch, the prices actually decrease on the GameTime app. So maybe you're listening in the Dallas area or Houston, you're not far from Arlington. You can get over there for the All-Star Game. You want to try your hand? Do it, and be sure to use GameTime. It's so easy, and it's an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. So it's authentic. It makes getting tickets faster and easier. And as I mentioned, the prices go down the closer you get to first pitch or the start of whatever event it is that you're buying tickets to. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Here's what you do. Get out your smartphone, download the GameTime app, one word, and create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege. All one word, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Bill Steele. Boy, he angered a lot of you yesterday when we went through Phil Steele's quarterback rankings. I think I should qualify and clarify this. So Phil Steele's rankings, it's not like it's Phil's subjective opinion. So Phil, part of what he does in all of his rankings and his projections and everything, Phil has a computer-based metric system that he uses. He inputs all of his measurables, all of the criteria in his algorithm, and it spits out a number and a result for him. So that's true when Phil's picking games. It's true when he's handicapping games. It's true when he's looking and rating players and positions. So don't go crush Phil Steele's computer if you disagree. But it was interesting because Phil put out a ranking of the top 25 freshman wide receivers going into the college football season. And he did have an LSU player on the list. It was Jelani Watkins at number 21, the 21st best freshman wide receiver heading into this season. And I looked at that and I was surprised because I even went back and looked at my notes from spring. So Brian Kelly had a lot of media availability at spring. And I didn't see Jelani Watkins' name. And to be honest, I don't even know if Jelani Watkins was an early enrollee and was there in spring and I just didn't notice him, or if he's not showing up until fall. And I say that not to appear negligent, but just to express to you, like, this really feels like it's out of nowhere. We all have told this story a bunch. LSU loses the Heisman Trophy winner, 2 first-round picks at receiver, their offensive coordinator, who is a Broyles Award finalist, and we're all expecting this offense won't skip a beat because we're all confident in Garrett Nussmeier. We think Joe Sloan's going to be a great play caller, and you have maybe the best offensive line in college football, certainly in the SEC, if not all of college football. You've got a quartet of running backs that we all feel are really capable. And that receiver group, despite losing both your first-round picks in Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., they're still loaded with veteran talent. I mean, Kyron Lacy looks like he's ready to explode. We talked about him all through spring. Chris Hilton, same thing, has physically transformed his body and looks ready to rock. Aaron Anderson entering his third year in college. Those are three veteran players we're all expecting to be very good. On top of that, you added two transfers. CJ Daniels was a 1,000-yard receiver at Liberty a year ago. Xavion Thomas was from New Orleans, started his career at Mississippi State. He was their leading receiver in Starkville a year ago in the SEC. That doesn't even count young guys like Shelton Sampson, who was a 5-star, Kyle Parker, who are now entering their second year. And then you add the freshmen in Jelani Watkins and Kylan Billiot. And so I just look and I go, man, maybe Jelani Watkins could be really good, but where do the reps come from? A little thumbnail on the recruiting profile of Watkins. So LSU currently, on the current roster, lists him at 5'9", 158. So a lot of times, they'll try to cheat and give guys an extra inch or 5 or 10 more pounds. His recruiting profile was actually 5'10", 160. His LSU profile is 5'9", 158. So LSU's not cheating anywhere. And he was a 4-star and the number 35 wide receiver in the country. The superpower that Jelani Watkins has is he has legitimate track speed. He's a 2-time Texas 6A state champion in the 200 meters. He's the anchor of the 4x100 relay team that won the state championship, and his best time in the 100 was 10.27. Jelani Watkins is not only going to play football at LSU, he also plans to run track. So you were talking about a dude with legitimate track star speed. Think Trendon Holiday here. Smaller guy, tons of speed. That's what you have. So I get the fact that he has this amazing ability and has maybe a very high ceiling during his time at LSU. But where are the targets going to come from? A year ago, Malik Neighbors caught 89 balls. Brian Thomas was next with 68. Kyron Lacy had 30. Chris Hilton had 13. Aaron Anderson had 12 catches. And Mason Taylor had 36. Josh Williams had 14, but that's a tight end and a running back. I mean, your top 5 receivers, Neighbors, Thomas Jr., Lacy, Hilton, Anderson. That's your top 5. And Anderson had 12 catches all year. I mean, you have Lacy, Hilton, Anderson all back. You've added Daniel, Xavion Thomas. That's 5. Not to mention Sampson and Parker. That's 7. I mean, at best, is Jelani Watkins your 8th best receiver? I guess maybe just when I think of size and skill set, he could play Aaron Anderson's role in this offense. So if there's an injury or Aaron Anderson isn't performing, maybe Jelani Watkins can fill that role and have an impact as a freshman. But boy, it sure seems more likely that this is a guy that we look at after 2024, like 25 and beyond. Because listen, you're going to lose Kyron Lacy and Chris Hilton and very likely CJ Daniels and Xavion Thomas. So 4 of those top guys we're expecting to count on. And who knows about Aaron Anderson, should be gone after this season. So the opportunity for some of those young guys to really emerge looks like it would be in 2025. But, when Phil Steele puts that out there, it's not plucked from the air. Phil's not guessing or making things up. It's not his opinion. He looks at all the measurables, all the data, plugs them into his computer, which spits out rankings. And his ranking really, really likes Jelani Watkins. Admittedly, I haven't talked a lot about Jelani Watkins at all, but the first time they let us out there for fall camp to watch, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on the freshman out of Texas in Jelani Watkins to see what kind of impact and impression he might be able to make as a rookie out of Baton Rouge. Okay, it is Locked on LSU. We got one segment to go. We're glad to have you aboard with us here. Admittedly, most LSU fans aren't locked into gymnastics, but every LSU fan knows who Olivia Dunne is. And she's returning to Baton Rouge for another season. And I want to tell you why that's significant, not only for LSU, which may seem obvious, but for Olivia Dunne as well. We'll get to that next here on Locked on LSU, your team every day. When NIL went live back on July 1st of 2021, LSU had what they thought was this great marketing idea. They went up to Times Square in New York, and they took out these big billboards in Times Square which said NILSU, we're open for business. And they brought Olivia Dunne out there and took photos in Times Square and splashed it all over their social media. And they were able to do that with Olivia Dunne because Olivia Dunne was already independently wealthy and was already a mega influencer. Because when TikTok was coming of age, before most people knew what TikTok was, after it moved from Musical.ly to TikTok, Olivia Dunne went super viral and amassed more than 1 million followers on TikTok, and that following grew to her Instagram and everywhere. And when NIL went live, she had an NIL valuation in the 7 figures. Her NIL valuation now, according to On3, is close to $4 million. The point being, Olivia Dunne's decision to return to LSU gymnastics doesn't make a lot of financial sense. Because if you're an LSU student athlete, you got to go to class, you got to go to practice. And if we're being very honest, and I don't know if you follow the LSU gymnastics team very much, and it's okay if you didn't, just very candidly, I did. My family's big into gymnastics. I have nieces that were very competitive. A sister-in-law was a very competitive gymnast as well. And so our family's into it. And I love the team. I think Jay Clark is awesome. I really respect tremendously the job they do. It's a lot of fun to watch. Just all this stuff. I'm not sitting here breaking down gymnastics because I don't think there's this large-scale interest in it. And me breaking down scoring and all that sort of stuff. But just suffice to say that I am a fan. I do like gymnastics. And all that to say, Olivia Dunne isn't one of LSU's best gymnasts. Now, listen, if you're a scholarship athlete at a place like LSU, you're phenomenal. You are elite. But she's not regularly included in the rotations because there are athletes that are better. All that, it's not to be disparaging. It's just to say she amassed tremendous amounts of fame outside of gymnastics, and not because of like Haley Bryant, who is a magnificent, literally the best gymnast in the history of LSU's program. And again, all that to say, not in any way to be disparaging to Olivia Dunne. It's more to compliment her because she is a mega influencer. She has an influencer NIL valuation in the millions of dollars. She has immense opportunity outside of LSU. We have seen her on the cover, in Sports Illustrated swimsuit. We have seen her on the cover of Sports Illustrated, The Money Issue. She has done national advertisements for Viore and so many others. The point is she doesn't need LSU. Olivia Dunne doesn't need LSU. She is going to be immensely wealthy and famous regardless of whether or not she competes ever again at LSU. And in choosing to come back, she's choosing to go to class and she's choosing to go to practice, even knowing on those Friday nights she's not going to be in the rotation often to compete. It's mostly to be part of that sisterhood, to be part of that team, because it's something she's done her whole life and wants to do one more season. And quite honestly, y'all, I respect the hell out of that. I really do. Not pandering, I mean it sincerely. Because there's no payoff. Yeah, let me explain to you the flip side. If Angel Reese had come back to LSU, that would have made more sense. Because the NIL opportunities for Angel Reese in college would have been greater than in the WNBA. Because if we're being very honest, and look, she's been incredible, right? She set the consecutive games with a double-double record. She's an all-star. But if we're being very honest, the television numbers in the WNBA pale in comparison to what we see in women's college basketball. The television contract for women's college basketball in the SEC gives you more exposure. The attendance is greater. Now, Caitlin Clark has changed some of that, and Angel Reese to a degree as well. But my point is, Angel Reese would have gotten more fame and notoriety remaining in college than she would have in the WNBA. So there would have stood a reason for her to stay. I mean, WNBA salaries for rookies are, topping out at $75K. That's hardly relevant. But for Olivia Dunne, it's the opposite. Whether she doesn't need a platform at LSU to put her on TV and to be famous. She's going to be famous no matter what. So I guess all that to say, in an NIL era where there are so many athletes that are focused, and I am not upset about student athletes that go get their bag. If you follow me, you know that. Where student athletes are maybe just looking for the biggest payday and how to promote themselves. For Olivia Dunne, quite honestly, the most selfish thing that she could do, and I'm not saying selfish in a negative term, I mean just the thing that she could do for herself would be to leave LSU, to not spend her time going to class and going to practice and going to gym meets where she's probably not going to compete very often. It would be a better use of her time to go to New York, to shake hands and meet influencers and other famous people that can help her advance her career in whatever avenue she wants to go. Spend time with her very famous boyfriend who just turned an all-star nod with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Like, that would be certainly a more obvious, sensible use of her time, but she just wants to be at LSU and she just wants to be a part of a team. And as a young woman, I think she realizes those opportunities won't be there forever. And she has one more opportunity to do something she's done her entire life, and that's compete in gymnastics. And she wants to continue doing it and knows that money and fame and all that stuff, the opportunities for influence will be there 12 months from now, the same they are right now. And I really admire that tremendously, what she's doing in the decision she made. And I would have completely understood if she would have walked away. Would have completely understood that. But the decision to come back, make no mistake, is rooted in nothing more than the fact that she loves LSU, she loves gymnastics, and knows she has one more opportunity to do it. And so she's taken that opportunity, and I salute her for it. And quite honestly, the biggest winner in all this is LSU and the LSU gymnastics program, because with Olivia Dunne, every time she posts in an LSU Leo at an LSU meet, or even her posting on social media her decision to return, untold millions of people are going to see that video across multiple social media platforms. It'll be written about on every website that both follows influencers and follows athletics, and it's going to shed an immense amount of attention onto the LSU athletics department, the gymnastics program. That's the type of media and reach that you just can't buy, that you can't pay for. So I know I'm being long-winded here, but all that to say is she just has my respect for making a decision which is certainly not money or time-based. It's just a thing she wants to do because she loves LSU, wants to be part of a team, and wants to compete one more time. And not to sound romantic about it, but isn't that the thing that makes most people fall in love with college athletics to begin with? And Olivia Dunne is embodying that right now. So I commend her for it, and I salute it. One more year of Olivia Dunne at LSU, and as she said, not done yet. We'll see if the Tiger gymnasts can go back-to-back next spring. Okay, that'll do it for us here on this edition of Locked on LSU. Hey, if you're new, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us and leave a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, would greatly appreciate it if you'd smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We're here every single weekday for original content, about 30 minutes or less on Locked on LSU. Your team every day.